Welcome to the Wildly More podcast. This is Kate. I'm Joe Vicani. At the release of this podcast, we'll have been married 24 years. And our heart for doing this is that it is our hope that through listening to each one of these episodes, you would be able to live a life of more courage, develop more resilience, and truly live more free than you ever had before. So today we're going to talk a little bit about how we found some meaning and rest and encouragement through a time in our life that had anything but rest at the time. And it's a situation that happened in 2016, and it has to do with a trip we ended up taking. But the origination of this trip actually happened in Africa.
Yeah, I was on a trip in Sierra Leone, and somebody there, I can't remember, probably one of our staff, came up to us, to me, to be an encouragement and just said, you're like a city on a hill. It was just kind of out of nowhere. I was like, thank you. I mean, I know that's from the Bible, but just made note of it and came back home and was sitting and decompressing one day after the trip and scrolling, and I saw a conference called City on a Hill. And we've learned with God that these little signs are always there along the way, and it can be a great adventure if you jump in and say yes. So I said to Joe, I think we're meant to go to this. It didn't hurt that it was down in Miami. So we registered for the trip and planned to go.
And it was a conference connected to a church that was brand new at the time. We knew nothing about this church. It was called VU, and it was one of their first conferences. So we booked the trip. We were excited about it. We've always believed in hard work, but also finding those things that refresh you. And before we even got on the trip, it almost didn't happen.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what happened. I'm sure it was something I did, but I would say that we had probably like one of the top 5 fights of our marriage the night before. It was really, really bad. And so I, was packing my things, and then I'm like, I'm not going on this trip. And then I said, I think I brought up, because I usually do like the trip planning, so I brought up the Expedia app, and at one point, I don't know, I'm sure this has happened to anybody else who's married. You just have these like poignant moments that you can't forget, or like in an argument where you like say something and you know it's funny and that it's going to be funny later, but you can't like break character because you're like mad and you're good and mad. But I got out my phone and I said, I will push the button. I will cancel this. Like this was some big threat or something. And then I just thought to myself, well, wait a minute. I booked this trip. I heard you're a city on a hill thing. I'm supposed to go on this. I don't care what you do. I'm going. And I packed my things and made my plan, if I had to go alone.
So, spoiler alert, we went on the trip, and I'm so glad that we did. And I'm so glad that we did not push the button. And starting that trip, Kate decided to pull a book off the shelf that she hadn't read in a while. It could have been because even though we were starting the process of taking the trip, maybe we weren't talking, and she was going to read a book on the plane.
Oh, it's not maybe. I mean, and this is the funniest thing. You usually bring you've gotten better, but you usually bring like anywhere from 3 to 7 books with you, even when we travel for a short thing. And I never do because I get distracted by other things. But I was like, oh, I'm gonna signal that I'm not gonna talk. Like I told you, it was top 5, not a proud moment for me, but I'm not gonna talk to. I'm gonna bring a book. I'll read this entire book if I have to. So I brought the book, and then I know one thing about you is you like to read books together, and so then I was
talk about stuff.
Reading it, and I was going, ooh, wow. I mean, like I said, not an ideal moment, but then I came across this incredible quote.
Before we get to the incredible quote, I just want to say, categorizing your fights in the top 1, 5, the truth is, in a marriage, you need to learn how to fight well because you won't have a top 5. You might have a top 1,000. I mean, there's
I'm just saying the 5 best.
especially
Most interesting, most entertaining.
especially if you work with the person and you're around them all the time, the percentage will be higher. But
But,
it was
we're
in
in ministry. You're a pastor. We couldn't possibly fight. We're perfect.
so the book was called Daring Greatly, and it was the quote in the book was pulled from another quote by Theodore Roosevelt called "The Man in the Arena." And so here we are on the plane. We had never heard of the book Daring Greatly, nor this quote. And do you want to read it, or do you want me to read it?
The button while I do it. It says, "It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotion, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly."
And that quote impacted us. It's guided us. But moving on from that quote,
Mm.
that's the plane ride.
Yep.
Now we get to the car rental.
Yep. We're not to the point of swinging hands and skipping, but things are on the up. We're going. We're gonna have this trip, and we get to the car rental area. I had pre-booked it. And, it's not really a good sign when you've got like the professional rental booths all lined up, and you're scanning down and you can't find yours, and then finally you find a little sign that it's like off to some back corner, and there's like one person on a computer. They didn't really speak good English, but we found our spot, and they said, "Oh, well, you have to go out into the parking garage to the booth, and they'll show you where your car is." So we go out there again. They're not speaking English, but we're still on the, upside of things, ready to have a great trip. And they go, "Okay, down that aisle, go over there. There's your car." So we go over to it. I think you start putting the bags inside, and I go over to my side. My side is covered in poop. I couldn't identify if I don't know what it was. It was not just a little bit of bird poop. It was all over, on the handle, all of that. So I say, "Joe, there's a problem," and I show you the side of my car, my side, and you're like, "All right, let's go back up to the booth and tell them." Normally they have you like if you see any damage or anything on it. So we go back over. Now again, there's a language barrier. So Joe's being like super nice about it. "Hey, ma'am, there's." Do you remember what you called it?
Yes, I do. Well, first, in these moments, the middle school persona could come out, the inner child, and just to describe this car, the way it looked, it's as if someone was swinging on a rope, and as they had their legs up in the air, and as they went across the car, sprayed it. I've never seen such an artistry of things pouring off handles. It just was incredible.
The scene
However,
fit what led up to it, for sure.
However, I went to the lady and was trying to explain it in a nice way, and I used the word, I think, caca.
Yep, with some strange accent, like that was going to help it be better.
And there was still a misunderstanding of what was going on.
So then I won't say the word on the podcast, but let's just say I said a very strong word. I said, "No, ma'am, it is beep on the car." And she goes, "Oh, okay." So then they get us into a different car, and we go on our way
Headed to the conference.
conference.
So we're obviously headed to the conference. We're really excited. Time is now cut short. We're a little stressed because we had to get us another vehicle. It's hard to find parking. This is before, apps, MapQuest, things that were tools. This is 2016, so it took a little bit longer. we finally just found a road, a side, parked the car. We walked into the conference, went to the conference the first night, and the message was awesome. And it really encouraged us. We left the conference, walked out,
Skipping now, hand in hand.
and I actually opened up the door for her to get in, closed the door. I walked around the car. As I'm walking around the car, I notice people rappelling off of a building. And I close the door, and immediately a bunch of cop cars surround our vehicle. Police officers are people with SWATs, guns are in the back of our car and next to our windows telling us to get out.
Yeah, and I just want to say at this point, we were parked in front of a place called the Naughty Rooster.
But we didn't know that at the time.
I definitely saw what was in those windows.
We'll
when I
get to
pulled
that
up.
in a minute.
And then there's people from the conference walking by. But they pulled us out of the car. Now we're facing each other, chest against the car, looking at each other, getting handcuffs pretty violently put on us. We had marks on us. And being like screamed at by all of these police officers. And come to find out, the car had been recently involved in a homicide, and it had been stolen from the car rental place. It had reported it as stolen. The suspect was a female, so I was the suspect. He was the accomplice, apparently.
No connection to the early arguments or anything.
No, we were not being arrested for not fighting well. And but the funniest thing for me looking back was what you said when you put down your window when the police came with the gun. I'm a pastor. The guy goes, okay, yeah, sure, you're a pastor. I don't think he had heard that excuse from a criminal before.
So if you ever read the Gospels, what's cool about the Gospels is they're eyewitness accounts, and they both tell the truth from watching the account. Sometimes you get different details because different authors include different things. So I was interested to see your recollection of what went on and how you would share that. One of the first things I remember in that moment when we had the police officers next to us and I said, I'm a pastor, was I was fearful of thinking, are we on a reality show? And when they did pull us out of the car, they had both of us facing the car and both of us in handcuffs. And they seemed kind of suspicious. I think probably now looking back, it's because, like you said, Kate didn't fit the description of the person who committed the murder. But they were like kind of holding back, but they were obviously, it was a serious deal. And I remember looking at Kate with the handcuffs and thinking, maybe this is like a reality show. And I remember looking around and not seeing cameras. And then I thought, oh no, what if my wife's being trapped? What if they're going to traffic my wife? And all these fears were going through us. And as Kate said, when they pulled us out of the car, they made us sit down on the curb. And if you've ever had to sit down with handcuffs behind your back, it's a very challenging thing to actually try to do when your hands are behind your back. And as we were sitting down, there were people from the conference walking by us. And of course, I think we had a conference wristband. Thankfully, it was behind our back. But it was just an interesting moment of, here we are, people are being let out. And then, as Kate said, when we turned around, we noticed I parked in front of a risque place called the Naughty Rooster. So it was just a full effect. But after the police realized what had happened when the car was not reported returned, they realized they were very apologetic to us. I, of course, used it as an opportunity to say, well, all right, they have our attention. I was telling them about, I'm a pastor. This is a Christian conference. There's a church here. I thought, I have a captive audience because they obviously arrested someone and who did not commit some kind of a crime. But what's interesting was now we have this car. They took off, and we're like, well, what do we do with this car now? Like, there was a crime, and they had basically told us that they couldn't take it for some reason.
We had to return it to the rental place, and they ensured us that it had been taken off of the registry because we're like, are we going to get, because I think Miami's like it might be the grand auto theft capital. And now at this point, it's super late at night, and I'm like, I don't want to be in this car. I think I was on the phone for like an hour with the car rental place. And what happened is the airport that we rented it from, that like branch of the rental place was closed. So we had to drive further to another one. But one interesting thing that I just remembered was I had an older police officer, older gentleman with me. And when they started to very quickly, because I said, go look in my purse, you'll see the car rental paperwork is in there. When they started to unfold that they had made a massive mistake, he got like really pale. He's like, I don't know. He's like, you guys must have angels around, like something, because he said, you don't understand how violent these situations get, because this was like the highest alert level, and the suspects are considered very dangerous. And normally police officers don't take any chances. He said, I've never seen them not like slam people to the ground. Like you could have had broken ribs. He said something held them back from doing that. So I was grateful for that. Wrists were a little swollen and sore, but I was grateful that we weren't body slammed to the ground.
And of course, being a pastor, I asked for a copy of the police report and took pictures just in case people were thinking, how are they raising money for their charity? Well, clearly they fly down to these obscure places and rent stolen cars and are committing crimes, raise money for their charity, but that's neither here or there. We finally got a new car, drove back to the hotel. By the time this was all done, it was 3 a.m., and the conference doors opened up at 7 a.m. So we went down there to be refreshed, and now we're literally having this experience. We're wide awake at 3 a.m., and the conference started at 7. But we still got up early. We slept 2.5 hours. And then what happened next was really what God did to speak to us and encourage us. The opening session of the conference, there was
Yeah, so a lot of times at conferences, they'll promote the next year. And they said, oh, before we get today started, we want to show you the promo video for next year. And, lights go down, interesting music starts playing. And we hear, it's not the critic who counts. And it literally, their whole conference promotion for the next year was the Man in the Arena quote that we had never heard before, read on our way down. Pretty amazing.
And that just was everything we needed to fill us up and encourage us. And that quote was one of the few quotes at that point we hung in our house. And it has guided us and led us to so many new adventures, even into the future. It'll pop up here and there at times in our life, and we kind of feel like it's God's way, and this is the way forward. We're engaged in this. And one of the things he wanted to share with you in ministry and serving together and pursuing your dreams is that you're going to have to find things that refresh you. And sometimes you think, well, all I got to do is take a nap, or I'll take a day off. But you can take a day off and not feel refreshed. You could take a vacation week and then feel like when you get back, you need a vacation from your vacation. And what we found is you have to find the things that bring life and refresh you, and it won't look the same for everybody. And for us, it's often been these little trips away or short getaways we've done, or things we've taken with our kids. And it's just little things like that that have strengthened us. What keeps you, Kate, from not hitting the stop button, cancel button?
Well, I was going to go have a good time.
But in life, because
yeah. So this story, if you tried to like make a show about it would be like, this is not believable. And that's actually how a lot of our lives have been, it just is one crazy thing after the other. And like he said, we were trying to go and get refreshed. People would say to us, I would joke with my counselor, she would say, you need to get rest. I said, rest is a 4-letter word, or we used to say, we'll sleep when we're dead. And then we said, we better sleep or else we're going to be dead. And then we would say, people would say, you're burning the candle at both ends. And I'm like, yep. And now we're getting the middle too. We're getting it from every angle. But we would try to be intentional, especially when there was an obvious sign to like happen with this trip to go and do something. But you would see that like the enemy and the warfare was still happening. But then what we started to learn was when you see that resistance pop up, like, and you don't feel peace, obviously, that that's actually exactly where you're supposed to be. And darkness is trying to prevent you from the thing that you needed to keep going. I really believe that when you're working with the Lord and for the Lord, which all of us are as followers of Jesus, we're a part of his mission, regardless if we do it full time in ministry or not. But when you're working for the Lord, you're going to constantly be facing resistance. And so you can pay attention to what that resistance looks like and actually say, that's where I need to press in. So we obviously needed to go to that conference. We needed to be reminded that we are a city on a hill as believers. We are the light of the world, to not hide that. And light is needed because darkness is great. So don't be afraid. I know so many people that the second they step out in faith, and that might just look like reading their Bible every day for a week, crazy things will start happening. Press into it. Don't run from it.
That's good. It reminds me of when you open up the scriptures, inform all of our thinking. You read Paul's life and he shares stories, shipwrecked, bitten by a snake, flogged, starved. You read his life and it sounds anything but restful and relaxing. And yet he'll also write things about how I've learned to find contentment in all things. And we would encourage you in the midst of it. There's different seasons you'll have, and when you have little kids, finding that refreshment, and that might be something you do for 15 minutes. That's all you're going to have in that window. And when you're a college student, it looks different. And when you're older, and your kids are out of the house, it looks different. But in every season and in everything you do, try to find those few things that bring you contentment and renew you in life. It doesn't always have to be a trip, a long thing. It could be 15 minutes. But also always wake up expecting that God is going to speak to you and guide you and bring the things that bring you that refreshment. Because if he's truly a loving father, then of course he wants you to be rested and to be renewed. Any last thoughts?
Just as you said that, I pictured the camp at a battlefield. So the truth is that we don't ever leave the war. We are in a spiritual war. Anybody telling you differently is lying and deceiving you. And it's important that the Bible talks about being awake, being alert, be sober-minded so many times. And I'm sure many of you listening, many of our friends, I know your stories, and I do the same thing of, I'm just so surprised. Why did this happen? It's like, well, we're actually in a war. There's good and there's evil. And when you're walking with the Lord, you're advancing his kingdom. That means that there's going to be resistance. And so you don't ever leave the war until you get to heaven and all things are ended and God has ultimate victory over Satan and the enemy and his darkness and forces that are at work. But it's taking those moments like soldiers would on a battlefield, where they go back to camp at night and they make a fire, bind up their wounds, tell stories of battle stories, failures and victories, eat something, laugh, sing the songs of their king, and then go back out there. And that's just what I imagine. It's important to take those moments to go back. It's important to know that God is the one who ultimately trains us to fight, gives us everything that we need, but he also enjoys being back at camp with us, and he's there with you, wanting to refresh you, entertained. I'm sure that he is very entertained by all of our moments. Don't say you're thinking you didn't say I'll push the button too. You've had those moments, whether it's with your spouse, coworker, whatever, with God, like, I'm going to push the button. I'm getting out of this thing. I'm sure he gets a good time laughing at us. He loves us. And he just wants us to get back in there, to take the moments to rest, but get back in there and fight alongside him for his mission.
I appreciate you, after now celebrating 24 years, not hitting the stop button, cancel button on me for all the times that I was that bird that flew across your beautiful car and left it a mess.
Now you confess it was you the whole time.
So I appreciate you and love you. And I want to thank everyone who listened today to this podcast. How you can help get the podcast out and spread the word is by liking, subscribing, putting on notifications that lets YouTube know that people are interested in hearing this kind of stuff. So I want to thank you all for listening today. And we hope that everything you heard today can help make your life a little bit more free, help you to live a little bit more wild, and have a little bit more courage. And may you live a life that you become a person who's in the arena, daring greatly, that no matter whether you fail, what was the last part of it? That whether he fails.
You might enjoy victory, but if he fails, at least he does by daring greatly.